Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. So good to be here. Thank you so much for having us. It's really wonderful to be part of this. Like, even if it's a virtual community, it's good to be back with all of you here, with the Jamstack community, with the FITC community. As Brian mentioned, I'm a product manager on Azure Static Web Apps. It's one of my all-time favorite products, and I'm so excited that I get to share some of the wonderful things that we're helping build on Azure for Jamstack developers. And I'm joined today by Anthony, my wonderful friend and colleague. Anthony, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I think Brian covered it pretty well. I'm a PM on Azure Functions and Azure Static Web Apps, and today I'm your sidekick.
Well, I'm hoping that you're going to be the main kick rather than the sidekick. But yeah, if y'all are excited about learning about local dev experience and kind of, we have a challenge today, right, Anthony? Our goal is to basically do everything out of VS Code. It might be a bit difficult to get everything done, but we're at least going to try that, and we're going to keep each other honest. So do let us know in the chat whenever you have questions or whenever you see that we're not doing the right thing. So keep us honest. And I want to bring up my screen, if that's okay. So here we have, for those of you that haven't used or haven't heard about Azure Static Web Apps in the past or before, it is a service that automatically builds and deploys full stack apps to Azure from a code repository. Apps are built and deployed based on code changes using GitHub. And Anthony and I will show you today how it works and how we can achieve all of this from VS Code. And as you can see here, we're starting our pet coding session, or maybe pair programming session, also with our our Clippy and cats and ducks, rubber ducks here, just in case they might be useful. All right. So anything else that you want to add to this, Anthony?
No, let's just dive into it.
Okay, awesome. All right. So the application that we're looking at today is actually an application that is a starter app that's been built by the Strappy team. It is an e-commerce application that uses Nuxt.js as well as Snipcart. I saw in some of the comments and the messages that you all have sent asking questions about Snipcart. This is a great e-commerce application that you can use to sell stickers to your friends. We have here the Jamstack stickers that are basically are covering some of the things that we're going to look at today. So I have this application running in my local environment at localhost 3000, and I've started it here in the VS Code terminal. And the first task that we have is to go ahead and deploy this to the cloud. And I did mention that we're going to have a pair programming session. So before anything else, I do want to invite Anthony to a live share session. So this is a live share in VS Code, and I can invite participants by clicking invite. And I'm going to share this in chat here in my message application. Let's see. And Anthony can join the live share session. And in order to deploy this local host application to the cloud, what we're going to do is we're going to use VS Code extension. So we have built for y'all this Azure Static Web Apps VS Code extension that allows you to run and debug your static web app in your local environment. So this means that you can basically run side by side our next Nuxt.js application or any other type of front-end application alongside our serverless APIs and other things that we're going to look at in just a minute. And I see that Anthony joined as well, which is great. So first thing that we're going to do here is create a new static web app. And I'm going to do that by clicking this in the Static Web Apps extension. I'm going to click the plus button, and it's going to ask me what's the name of my application. It already guesses that I might want to name it sticker shop because that's what my GitHub repository is called. And I want to add jam here. So this is a sticker shop jam, and I need to reload. This happens sometimes. Just when Anthony joins the live share session. Okay, so I need to share this again. All right, it's copied to the clipboard. Anthony, repeat.
Joining.
Yay. All right. Sticker shop jam. And then we're going to deploy this application globally. But what we have to choose here is a region for our serverless APIs or some of our staging environments. So I'm gonna choose to deploy to West US. And you can see here the non-comprehensive list of frameworks that are available for deployment. We mentioned that we're currently looking at a Nuxt application. So I'm gonna choose custom here. And the location of my application is in my root folder, and then Nuxt builds the production artifacts in the dist folder. So that's what I'm gonna add here. And now we're starting the deployment of our Nuxt.js application. So we can see here that there's feedback from the VS Code extension. I can go back into viewing and editing the GitHub Actions workflow that has been created for us by Static Web Apps, as well as I can see here in my extension, all of my Static Web Apps that I've created in the past, alongside my sticker shop jam and the actions that are being, that have run in the past for this repository. And let's go ahead and edit or view the GitHub workflow. Do you want to talk a bit about what we have here, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, so this is a workflow that was created when Simona kind of deployed her app to Azure. And so we actually commit this repo on your, or we commit this workflow to the repo on your behalf. And it's a pretty simple GitHub Actions workflow. It has one main task here that basically builds and deploys your app. So we actually we detect the type of app it is. In this case, it is a Node.js based app. So we know how to build it. And then we're just going to deploy what's in the dist folder after it's done building to Azure. And this runs every time you commit code to your repo.
Yeah, and we listen to pushes to the main branch, as well as we generate preview environments whenever you create new pull requests against your main branch. So these are some of the events that we listen to and are being triggering this job, build and deploy job. And then we also listen to the close pull request. We have a close pull request job, which basically removes those ephemeral environments that we create with your pull requests whenever those are being merged. So I guess the next thing that we need to look at is whether, and we see here that our application has been successfully built and deployed, and now it's no longer at our local host environment, but rather at this random URL that has been generated for us by Azure Static Web Apps, and it's ready to be shared with everyone out there to get their awesome stickers to put them in on their new laptops, right? Everyone got new laptops recently, at least I did, and I'm happy. Okay, so that was our first task, right? Deploying things from our local environment. Did we do that? We did, right?
We did.
Okay, awesome. High five. Next thing. We also want to add to this application an authentication feature. So currently, we see that we have a shopping cart, which is empty. We have the ability to maybe buy some stickers, but we also want to create authentication, add authentication and authorization for our users. And Azure Static Web Apps actually provides a streamlined authentication experience for everyone to use. So you have access to a series of default providers like Twitter, GitHub, and Azure Active Directory that you can use in your client application by calling a set of endpoints that are available for everyone. So one of them, for example, is /auth/login in order to log in your user and appending the authentication provider. You can also configure custom authentication providers if you wanted to. And I'll go ahead and open the navbar component. And right here, I will, rather than writing the code, which might take a bit of time, I'm just going to copy and paste and we can talk through it with Anthony. So the first thing that we're going to do is add the links for this. So I mentioned that this is how we call the authentication endpoint in static web apps. And whenever this is being called, we basically invoke the GitHub authentication, Twitter, or Azure Active Directory. And we do this only when we don't have the user information available. And you might be asking, Anthony, where do we get that user information from?
Where do we get that user information from?
Well, there is another endpoint that we can query in Azure Static Web Apps that's auth me. So I just added here in our component a method to get user information, which basically calls this auth me endpoint, and usually it returns either null if, well, if you're logged in, then it will return your user details, user ID, username, and a set of user roles that you might have configured for your users. And if you're not logged in, it can return null. Anything else that you think we should add, Anthony?
No, it looks great.
Okay, so we can test this, right? If I go back into my browser, this is our production. We want to go into our front-end application, and already we see these wonderful buttons that we've created for authentication. So logging in with GitHub, but this page could not be found. Why is this happening, Anthony?
Because the endpoints aren't there. They exist when you deploy it to the cloud, but when you're running locally, they're not there. What do we do?
So something else that, and I'm already using my browser, but I want to show folks this other tool that we have built that's called Azure Static Web Apps CLI, which is basically a CLI that allows us to proxy requests between your front end and your serverless APIs or your backend, so that you don't have to deal with things like CORS, but also it emulates authentication for us, and it allows us to test authentication and not run into this page not found when we call these Azure Static Web Apps endpoint. So I already installed the Static Web Apps CLI, and actually when you're using the VS Code extension, that is very well integrated with this CLI, so we can go ahead and run this application, right?
Yeah.
And I can do that using VS Code, run and debug. We have here SWA run application. And I'm going to click the green arrow button here. So now, rather than having our application running at localhost 3000, we're connecting to the Static Web Apps CLI server, which is running at port 4280, and this is proxying the request to our front end and eventually our backend as well. And we can see that I've logged in, I've tested, wow, I've tested this in the past, have I? Such a surprise. So I'm already logged in here with my GitHub username, and we can test the auth.me endpoint, which will give us information about the user information that I mentioned earlier. And now I can do also log out. And for some reason, my buttons are not working.
Oh, the links didn't work.
Sorry, the links don't, yeah.
That's okay, we can pretend they work. You can just type it into the, the location bar.
Yeah, I can log in with GitHub, and this is the emulator screen where we can hear, well, it seems like my mouse is actually having trouble here. Okay.
Oh, that's weird.
My click is gone.
Is it only in your browser? Can you click anywhere else?
Oh, well, maybe now. Yeah. Does it work? No. Okay, interesting problem to have.
If you want, I can actually share my screen because I can actually connect to your localhost 4280 over live share.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do it.
All right. Can you share that port with me?
Yes, let's see if I can. All right. Shared terminals. No, shared servers. 4280. Okay. All right.
All right, I'm opening that up right now.
Okay, and you should also start sharing your screen.
I will do that.
Anthony to the save.
It's like we planned this. Let's figure out a way to disable Simona's mouse so that I can get some screen time. Hopefully this works for me though. So I can actually go ahead and click on one of these things. So one of the great things about Azure Static Web Apps is that it allows the CLI that we have is that, instead of figuring out how to connect to the, the provider that you want to have set up, most of the time when people are testing locally, we just want to test as a certain user using this login. So we actually allow you to do anything here. So you can actually, I can pretend to be Simona if I wanted to. But in this case, I'll just kind of, I'll just pretend to be myself.
Let's pretend to be Brian.
I can do that. So yeah. I can be Brian, and then I can go ahead and log in. And so after I log in, so you can see here that I'm logged in as Brian. So I'm getting the same experience as I would get in the cloud, but I'm getting it locally, and I can, I can test it out using Brian now. I can log out and test it out as myself in case, different people have different roles. So it makes it really easy to kind of try out all the different capabilities without deploying your app.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that was awesome. That was great, and such a good save. The next thing that we want to do is push this to the cloud, right? We wanna make a PR. We want to create a new branch. Are you able to do that?
Let's switch back to your machine because you have the GitHub extension installed.
Okay.
Because our goal is not to be in the browser.
Yeah.
Too much.
Okay.
I'm already in the browser.
All right. Let me share my screen. And here, so I have my changes, but rather than pushing this to main, we want to push this to Jamdev, right? A new branch.
Yeah.
And this is co-authored with Anthony, of course. This way you can already approve this pull request. And then VS Code asked me if I would like to create a pull request for this branch. Absolutely. and it's giving me a nice UI here where it's asking me, where do I want to merge changes from? So from the Jam Dev branch into the main branch. And the reason why I'm creating this pull request is because once I create a new pull request, a GitHub action will start running, and it will create a preview environment for us for this particular branch so that we can share them with our designer friends, and then they can tell us that these buttons are not centered, they don't look good, they need to be changed. And while that's happening, there was something else we wanted to do, right? The other key thing that we hear folks a lot within the Jamstack content context that they talk a lot about is serverless APIs. And basically you have we have built this wonderful front-end application, and let's say we want to add, let's see if this works. We want to add to our application the ability to for our users to send us feedback, whether they want more stickers or whether they want they want some other functionality. And I do have here a form that I've already created, but it's not fully implemented. So I've created the form, but the backend doesn't work. And we want to create a serverless API for that. And we're going to go back into VS Code, into our Azure Static Web Apps extension. And here we can create a new HTTP function. So this would be an API endpoint. And I can create that in JavaScript, TypeScript, C#, Python. Which one do you prefer, Anthony?
Let's do JavaScript.
Okay, let's do JavaScript. And this will be contact. And I know you've written this function many, many times before. Do you want to help me write it?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. And let me just go to the index file. So this is, now we have a new API folder that contains our contact function. And I see you're already here in the correct.
Yep, I am here. And now you're going to watch me type really fast.
Whoa.
I know. Amazing. That was like 1,000 words a minute.
So impressive. How did you do that?
I don't know. It must be this conference because I usually type like 30 words a minute.
I
don't know.
Well, I love it. We should come back.
Yeah, that's right.
It makes us very productive.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have a couple. So what do we have here? Do you want to talk through the code?
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward code. We're going to pull in a library from SendGrid, which we have to install from npm. And then we're literally going to use that library to send an email. So this function is going to fire every time we make a call to /API/contact. And it's just going to run this really simple JavaScript here. So let's go ahead and install the...
Do you still have access to my terminal?
I do. Let me try deleting some stuff and I'll find out.
Whoa.
No, I have to request access. So you have to give me some access.
Okay, so I have to make the terminal read write for everyone, Anthony included. Do we trust Anthony with our terminal?
You're going to find out in 30 seconds.
Okay. Please don't
delete
my...
I won't delete anything right now. Okay. So right now I am in your like in the folder where the app is running.
Okay.
I think I need to go into the API folder, right?
Yeah. That's where our serverless function is.
Yeah, and then now I will npm install SendGrid mail. And you're seeing my actual typing speed now.
Wait, are we still in the conference? Yes, we are. What's happening? Brian,
I don't know. It's blurring off. Yeah, superpowers are only there. It's like a little boost. Okay, so I've installed it. So what do we do now?
Okay, we also have an API key that we need to define in order to test this, right? And we do that in our local settings.json. This is where we can define basically application settings that can be used in our application. And I have my SendGrid API key. Everyone, please don't use it.
Okay, I'm not looking.
Don't take screenshots. And I think now we've created our function. I think next step is to run it, right? How do we run it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's on your machine. Do we just press F5 again? Does it just work?
I think it should. So I usually go do the click thing where I go into the run and debug panel, and then I double check that here I'm in my SWA, I'm using my SWA config, and I click the green arrow. I like the green arrow. And this will start now our front end. So it will start the Nuxt.js application as well as our serverless functions, which in my local environment, it runs Azure Functions Core Tools. And I think the most impressive part for me here is that we can debug our serverless functions in our local environment. So do you want to go ahead and add a breakpoint here in our serverless function just for the fun of it?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay.
I just added one.
Okay. Line 7, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go back into my browser and test this contact us form. And now I'm quickly typing, hi, Jamdev. Okay. Whoa, awesome. So now we're actually not in our serverless function.
Where are we?
We're in our view component. We're sending message.
So we're debugging the front end code as well right now.
Yes, we are. So we can check, is the name correct? DS, definitely, that's what I meant. And hi, Jamdev, perfectly, awesome. Now let's run. Okay, and now we're stopping into the Azure function or the serverless function we've seen earlier where Anthony added a breakpoint. And we can see that our body contains the email message and the information we provided in the form. Anthony, do you want to step over this?
Yeah, let's do that. Like, this is pretty cool. Like, I'm actually debugging on my machine through your machine. And I can actually inspect everything here as well.
I cannot get enough of this live share thing. It is the most impressive thing ever. Okay, but I'm just going to go ahead and just play, just be like, okay, we're done debugging, everything works. I think we're ready to push this to production already. And we see that we're back into our view component and your message has been sent successfully. And I would share my, let's see. Should I share my email as well? Do you want
already
to
shared
see
your
my
API key. You might as well share everything else.
Okay, let me just share my password as well. Okay. Hi, Jamdev. You're so awesome. We're happy. And this is not spam for sure. Okay, awesome. And this was sent just 0 minutes ago. All right. So we've seen how we can create a new or deploy a Nuxt.js application from our local environment from VS Code to Azure Static Web Apps. It's now, we know that it's been deployed to the random URL we've seen earlier, the nice URL. Then we've added authentication, and that should also be in our deployed in a preview environment. And we've also created a series of functions in our local environment, which we haven't pushed to the cloud yet, but we were able to run and debug these functions. Is there anything else that we need to do, Anthony?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much ready to start selling some stickers. I think all we have to do is just, like you said, push this API code. It's going to automatically build and deploy it for us. And then we probably just have to go maybe add a custom domain after, and then it gives us a free SSL cert, and then we can sell some stickers.
I love it. Okay, I'm ready for that. That will be my sidekick. That will be my sidekick. Okay, and let me see if I can find, so there's too many actions here because I have way too many applications. So let's see if we can find the preview environment here. I'm afraid we might have to go to GitHub. Do we have to do that? No, we have to refresh because we can see that this is our production environment. But then I think we should have a preview environment here as well. Yes, this is the second environment. And here I can browse the site. So this is our preview environment with the authentication functionality we've seen earlier. I can now log in with GitHub. And this is the real deal. Like this is the actual screen that asks me to authorize this application and log in with it. And then we can see that in the production environment, we actually, is this the production environment?
No, you got to remove the -4 and then put the 1 back in.
Okay. Yes, this is the production environment that doesn't have the authentication functionality.
Nice.
Cool. Well, I think that's all. I think that's all we had today, right?
Yeah, I think we did a lot.
Yay, high five. I thought that was a very productive pet coding session.
Yeah, we didn't even ask for help from the pets at all.
Are you still with us, Brian?
I am here. Sorry. That was awesome. I do love that. People were asking how they can get the animated Clippy there in their VS Code, and folks were sharing the extension. So I don't know if that might find it too distracting for me personally, but that's cool. I think
it's lovely. It gives wholesome to the whole coding session.
So yeah, that was really cool. I think one of the things, we do have a couple audience questions. One of the things I think that I wanted to point out that is unique about the way Azure Static Web Apps deploy stuff is that you do create this GitHub action as opposed to like it kind of being some kind of thing that's happening behind the scenes. You can actually sit there, you get the code for the GitHub action, and you can modify that, right? Like you could do whatever you need to do to update that and create your own kind of CI pipeline that goes into static web apps. Am I correct?
Yeah. So like if you have any kind of like really custom things that you want to have in your build process, or if you want to kind of run, Puppeteer or Playwright tests after to kind of test your deployment, you can do all that just by modifying that workflow.
That's really cool. Yeah. So that's neat. Actually, one of the audience questions relates to some of that integration because, I mean, obviously we're talking about GitHub Actions and a GitHub repo. And one of the audience members said, can you deploy code from a Bitbucket repo to an Azure Static Web App? It says, or they say, I know it's possible deploying to Azure Web Apps, but does it include the Azure Static Web App version as well?
Oh. So I think it's great that we have this question. It actually anticipates some of the work that we're currently doing to add support for more providers, including Bitbucket.
Okay, so basically the answer is not yet, but it's coming.
Exactly.
Great. Okay, awesome.
Currently we have support for GitHub and Azure DevOps.
Okay, very cool. Then another question from Nick was, is the GitHub extension using the GitHub CLI under the hood? Well, yeah, that's the question. Is it using GitHub CLI or is it doing something else behind the scenes? Do you know?
I think that's a wonderful question. I actually don't know because I installed it in VS Code and it did everything for me, as a lot of the VS Code extensions do. They install things like the Azure Static Web Apps extension as well. For example, if you don't have the Azure Static Web Apps CLI installed, it will prompt you to ask if you want to install it.
Okay, so the Azure Static Web Apps one is using the CLI behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
And
And can
Anthony,
you?
did you just Google whether that's the extension is using GitHub CLI?
Oh, I was actually looking for whether or not the GitHub extension is on GitHub. I would imagine that it is. So if you want to find out, you can probably look there. My guess is probably using the OctoKit SDK to talk to it.
Okay, cool. So I saw you deployed a serverless function really easily there. One of the things, so you mentioned other languages other than JavaScript. What other languages are supported for that?
C# and Python.
C# and Python. So JavaScript, C#, Python. And I must have missed it. Did you put it like in a special folder and then it knows to deploy it off as a function, or how do you do that? Did you have to go create it separately, or was it in the application code? I missed that part.
So we used the static web apps extension to create that function, which it asks you what's the name of the function that you want to create, and then it bootstraps a folder with the same name where it creates an index.js and a couple other files that are needed for Azure Functions to basically run this function.
Okay.
And what we do then is we deploy this function together with your front-end code to the cloud, to Azure Static Web Apps. And your function will be available at the API / the name of the function that you gave endpoint. That's why in our front-end code, actually, which I don't think I showed, we're basically calling this function by calling API / contact.
Okay,
yeah, and then
that makes sense.
Yeah, and then in terms of the repository, yeah, like by default, we put your function app inside of a folder called API. And if you kind of notice, like we didn't talk specifically about it, but in the workflow, we actually had API specified as where the function app lives, but it can live anywhere. And as long as that's reflected properly in the workflow, we'll be able to build and deploy it automatically.
Okay.
And
all right.
And I love that Anthony said function app earlier, because this is something that's also unique to Azure Functions compared to maybe other providers. With Azure Functions, you can have within your function app, you can have multiple functions. So you can add a contact function, you can add say hello function. I'm lacking any creativity here. Shopping cart, yes. And I think that's great that it gives you this ability to manage more functions if you wanted to within the same context and within the same application that then gets deployed and scaled together.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. So as opposed to like having to kind of build each one kind of self-contained, you can build them together as a grouping, and then share what, like, in environment variables and whatever else across these.
Yeah, environment variables, npm packages. It just kind of makes it really easy to kind of just think of all your functions as one thing versus a bunch of loose functions everywhere.
True. Okay, that makes sense. Actually, I did notice, and it caught my attention that you actually installed the npm package on the function instead of. I'm used to actually doing it on the application itself and then including it in the function, but you did it on the function, which I think makes a lot of sense. So, and along those lines, so some types of frameworks like Next.js and stuff, for instance, they have built-in API stuff in the framework. Do you all support deploying that automatically, or would I have to do some kind of setup for like deploying the API within a Next.js application as functions on Azure?
It's funny, Brian, you are asking all the right questions, and you are
I'm sorry, am I putting you all on the spot? I
No, this is great. These are all fantastic leading questions.
Yeah, and we currently with Azure Static Web Apps, we support Next.js and with static generated applications, so your SSG applications, and we are actually hopefully soon going to also be able to support this automatic API routes and other functionality in Next.js.
Okay, cool, excellent. Well, that's great to hear. I'm sure a lot of people are looking for that. So, and I love the live share stuff. It's one of those things. Like I do a lot of solo coding because of the nature of my job, but like I think it's awesome that you can do that. And I didn't realize. I knew you could share your local host. I didn't realize you could even like give somebody access to your command line and things like that. So, and debugging within it. So that's pretty amazing. So yeah, nice stuff. All right. Well, I think that's it for me today. Simona and Anthony, thank you so much for joining. This was really a lot of fun, and I like seeing the interaction of you two as you're coding there together. That was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for coming out, and we really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.